My stepbrother kicked down my bedroom door at 3 a.m. and screamed, "I want his room and I want it now." What happened next exposed a family secret so shocking that it destroyed a marriage, triggered a custody battle, and changed my life forever. Welcome back to Her Family Revenge. If you enjoy powerful family drama stories with shocking twists and emotional endings, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now let's get into today's story. I was half asleep when the crash jolted me awake. For a second I thought someone had broken into the house. Then I saw my bedroom door hanging crooked on its hinges and my stepbrother Logan standing in the doorway. His chest was heaving, his fists were clenched, and his eyes were filled with rage. Logan had moved into our house 6 months earlier when my father married his mother Sheila. We had never been close, but until that night I had never seen him act violently. Behind him stood my father Richard, looking terrified. He rushed forward and tried to calm Logan down, telling him to go back to bed, but Logan ignored him completely. Instead, he stormed into my room and began throwing my belongings off shelves as if they meant nothing. Books hit the floor, school papers scattered everywhere. Then he grabbed my laptop and shouted that the room should have belonged to him all along. I jumped out of bed, confused and scared, trying to understand what was happening. My father attempted to stop him, but Logan shoved him aside with surprising force. Then he pointed directly at my father and yelled something that made the entire room fall silent. He demanded that Dad tell me the truth before he did. The moment those words left his mouth, I noticed my father's face lose all color. Sheila appeared in the hallway wearing a robe, her eyes wide with panic. She immediately started pleading with Logan, begging him not to do this, but Logan was beyond listening. He kicked my desk chair across the room and screamed that he was tired of waiting. According to him, he had already waited 6 months, while I enjoyed what should have been his room. He accused Sheila and my father of breaking promises they had made before moving into the house. Sheila began crying as she tried to deny it, but Logan wasn't interested in excuses. He shouted that they had promised things would change once the family settled in. Then he turned toward me with a look of pure hatred and said something that made my stomach drop instantly. He claimed they had told him I was only temporary. For a moment, I couldn't even process what he meant. Temporary? What exactly was supposed to happen to me? My father stepped between us and insisted Logan was lying, but Logan simply laughed. It wasn't a normal laugh either. It sounded angry, bitter, and completely unhinged. Then he revealed something that changed everything. He said he had proof. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out several folded papers and waved them in the air. According to him, my father and Sheila had been planning to send me away to a military boarding school. He claimed they had discussed it for months, and that they expected me to be gone by January. I grabbed the papers from his hand and immediately started reading. My heart began pounding harder with every line. The documents contained email conversations between my father and Sheila discussing my enrollment at Branson Military Academy. At first, I thought there had to be some mistake, but as I kept reading, it became impossible to deny what was in front of me. They weren't simply discussing the idea. They were actively planning it. There were forms, schedules, and conversations about how to handle the transition. When I looked up at my father, expecting him to deny everything, he couldn't even meet my eyes. I asked him directly if he had really planned to send me away. His answer crushed me. He claimed it was only an option and that no final decision had been made. Before I could respond, Logan interrupted again. He called my father a liar and pulled out his phone. On the screen was proof of a $20,000 deposit that had already been paid to the academy months earlier. The payment date matched one of the emails exactly. My father's explanation instantly fell apart. You don't spend $20,000 on something you're merely considering. The evidence made it obvious. They weren't exploring options. They were preparing to send me away. As Sheila continued crying, she finally admitted something even worse. She said they believed it would be better for everyone. Hearing those words felt like a punch to the chest. Better for everyone? I had straight A's. I never got into trouble. I worked hard, stayed focused, and did everything right, yet somehow I was the problem. Logan suddenly started laughing again. This time he explained why. According to him, my achievements made him feel bad about himself. Then he began ripping my awards off the wall. My honor certificates, my state chess championship plaque, and my Eagle Scout recognition crashed to the floor one after another. Each impact felt like another piece of my trust breaking. My father tried to stop him, but by then the truth was already spilling out. Sheila admitted that they had discussed how my accomplishments affected Logan's self-esteem. She claimed I was so successful that it intimidated him. Logan sat on my bed like he already owned the room and proudly announced that everyone knew I would be leaving eventually. He talked about the larger closet, the better window, and all the reasons he deserved the space more than I did. Listening to him made me realize something horrifying. This wasn't a random outburst. Logan had been expecting this moment for months. Then, just when I thought the night couldn't get any worse, my father's phone started ringing. The caller was my mother, and somehow, she already knew everything. My father's phone rang, and the moment he looked at the screen, I could see panic spread across his face. It was my mother, Linda. She lived 2 states away, and there was no reason she should have known anything about what had just happened. Logan's smug expression instantly faded. I grabbed my own phone and held it up. The second I saw those emails, I had forwarded every single one of them to Mom. Dad reluctantly answered and put the call on speaker. The moment her voice filled the room, everyone froze. She wasn't confused. She wasn't concerned. She was furious. Without wasting a second, Mom demanded to know why Richard was secretly enrolling me in military school. Dad tried to explain that they were only discussing possibilities, but Mom immediately shut him down. She reminded him that according to their custody agreement, he couldn't make a major educational decision without her written approval. Then she asked a question that nobody in the room could answer. If it was only a discussion, why had he already paid a $20,000 deposit? Silence filled the room. Dad had no explanation. Logan looked stunned that his plan to expose everything had moved so quickly. Mom didn't stop there. She announced that she was already on the road with her lawyer and would be at the house by 9 in the morning. Before Dad could respond, she hung up. The room became painfully quiet. For the first time all night, nobody seemed to know what to say. Then Logan suddenly spoke up again. He claimed none of this changed anything because eventually I would leave for college and the room would belong to him anyway. His casual attitude made my blood boil. But before anyone could argue with him, Sheila finally said something that explained the entire situation. Through tears, she admitted that the military school idea had originally been hers. She confessed that Logan had threatened to move back in with his biological father if things didn't change. She was terrified of losing him and believed sending me away would solve the problem. The confession hit Logan like a truck. He immediately turned on his mother. His face went bright red as he accused her of making him look like the villain. According to him, she had promised him that everything would work out. She had told him I was temporary. She had convinced him that one day the room would be his. Now she was acting like he had invented the whole thing himself. The argument exploded between them right there in the hallway. Dad kept trying to calm everyone down, but nobody was listening anymore. Years of resentment, jealousy, and manipulation were pouring out all at once. Then Logan completely lost control. In a burst of anger, he slammed his fist into the wall beside my bedroom door. The drywall shattered instantly, leaving a huge hole. Pieces of plaster crashed onto the carpet. Everyone stared at the damage in shock. Logan shook his injured hand for a second before storming down the hallway and slamming his bedroom door so hard the entire house shook. Sheila collapsed into tears. Dad just stood there staring at the wall as if he finally realized how badly everything had gone wrong. I didn't wait around to hear more excuses. I picked up my laptop from the floor and checked the screen. It was cracked but still worked. Then I gathered my important documents, shoved them into a backpack, and walked straight into the bathroom. After locking the door, I slid down against it and sat on the cold tile floor. For the first time that night, I was alone. Through the thin walls, I could hear Dad and Sheila arguing. They weren't whispering anymore. They were blaming each other. Sheila accused Dad of agreeing to everything. Dad accused Sheila of pushing too hard. Neither one seemed concerned about me. They were only worried about what Mom and her lawyer would do when they arrived, hours past. Around 5 in the morning, loud knocking echoed through the house. Dad hurried downstairs to answer the front door. Through the bathroom vent, I could hear part of the conversation. It was one of our neighbors. The shouting and crashing had apparently woken up half the street. The neighbor sounded concerned and admitted that they had already called the police several hours earlier after hearing what sounded like a violent fight. My stomach dropped. Police were actually coming. Dad tried to convince the neighbor everything was fine, but it was obvious nobody believed him. About an hour later, another knock came at the front door. This time it was the police. I finally unlocked the bathroom and stepped into the hallway. 2 officers stood upstairs examining the damage. One of them stared at my destroyed bedroom door while the other photographed the hole Logan had punched into the wall. They asked me what happened, and I told them everything. I explained how Logan kicked down my door, destroyed my belongings, threatened me, and exposed the military school plan. They listened carefully and took notes. When I finished, they walked down the hallway and spoke with Logan. At first, Logan tried to act calm. He claimed it was just a normal argument between brothers, but the officers weren't impressed. They pointed out that normal arguments don't usually involve broken doors, destroyed property, and holes punched through walls. They photographed everything: my damaged room, my broken awards, my scattered school supplies. Every piece of evidence was documented. Dad begged them not to make an official report because Logan was applying to colleges next year. The older officer immediately shut that idea down. He explained that property damage and violent behavior had consequences. Whether charges would be filed later wasn't their decision, But an official report would absolutely be made. The warning that came next made Dad's face go pale. The officer said that if police were called to the house again for another violent incident, someone could end up being arrested regardless of age. By the time the officers finally left, it was nearly 7:30 in the morning. The house felt completely different now. Nobody was talking, nobody was arguing. Everyone seemed to be waiting for one thing. At exactly 8:30, a car pulled into the driveway. I looked out the window and saw my mother step out. Standing beside her was a woman in a dark business suit carrying a briefcase. Mom had arrived, and so had her lawyer. The moment I saw them walking toward the front door, I knew my father's nightmare was only beginning. At exactly 8:30 that morning, my mother's car pulled into the driveway. I stood near the front window watching as she stepped out, her face tight with anger and determination. The woman who got out beside her carried a leather briefcase and walked with the confidence of someone who had spent years winning arguments in courtrooms. That was Veronica Hayes, my mother's attorney. The second Mom walked through the front door, she rushed straight to me and wrapped me in the tightest hug I'd ever received. She immediately checked to make sure I wasn't hurt. For the first time since Logan had kicked down my door, I felt safe. But the comfort didn't last long because Veronica had already started documenting everything. Without wasting a single minute, Veronica began taking photographs throughout the house. She photographed the broken bedroom door, the hole punched through the wall, the damage inside my room, and every item that had been destroyed during Logan's rampage. She recorded videos and took detailed notes while my mother stayed beside me. Then Veronica sat down at the dining room table and asked me to explain everything from the beginning. I told her about the screaming, the destroyed room, the military school documents, the deposit payment, and the promises Logan claimed had been made. She listened carefully, occasionally asking questions while recording every word. When I finished, she turned her attention toward my father. The room became uncomfortably quiet as Veronica requested every document related to the military academy. Dad looked like he wanted to argue, but Sheila quietly told him there was no point anymore. Defeated, he disappeared into his office and returned carrying a thick folder. Veronica spread the documents across the dining room table and began reviewing them one by one. The more she read, the more serious her expression became. Then she suddenly stopped at a particular page and looked directly at my father. My mother leaned forward to see what she had found. That's when everything got even worse. At the bottom of one enrollment form were two signature lines. One belonged to my father, the other belonged to my mother. Dad's signature was already there. The problem was that my mother's signature appeared there too. My mother grabbed the paper and immediately recognized that she had never signed it. Veronica examined it carefully before asking Dad if he intended to submit the form. Dad nervously claimed it hadn't been submitted yet. Veronica then found another document showing the Academy's application deadline, which was only 2 weeks away. The implication was obvious. He had been preparing to submit paperwork using a forged signature without my mother's knowledge or permission. My mother's face turned red with anger. She told him that what he was planning wasn't just dishonest, it was illegal. Dad tried to defend himself by saying he was only getting everything ready in case they eventually agreed. Veronica immediately shut that argument down. She explained that preparing legal documents with a forged signature showed clear intent. Judges didn't look kindly on parents who attempted to bypass custody agreements. The room fell silent as my father realized he had no defense. Sheila tried to redirect the conversation by talking about all the opportunities military school would supposedly provide. She described leadership programs, discipline, scholarships, and future career benefits, but nobody was listening anymore. My mother cut her off and reminded everyone that this was never about educational opportunities. It was about removing me from the house so Logan could be more comfortable. Veronica agreed and pointed out that every document supported exactly that conclusion. Just when it seemed the situation couldn't get any worse, Logan walked into the room. He acted as though none of the legal problems mattered. Leaning casually against the wall, he smirked and said that eventually I would leave for college anyway. According to him, the room would be his sooner or later, so everyone was making a big deal out of nothing. Something inside me finally snapped. For months I had been trying to understand why Logan hated me. Now I understood that he didn't hate me because of anything I had done. He hated me because he blamed me for his own insecurities. I stood up and looked directly at him. Then I told him exactly what nobody else had ever been willing to say. I said that my achievements weren't responsible for his failures. I told him he spent more time being jealous of other people than improving himself. I said he blamed everyone around him because taking responsibility for his own life was too difficult. Every word hit him harder than I expected. The smug expression vanished from his face. For the first time since this nightmare started, he looked genuinely hurt. The room became completely silent. Then Logan turned around and ran out. A second later, his bedroom door slammed so hard that the entire house shook. Sheila immediately jumped to her feet and glared at me. She accused me of being cruel and insensitive, but my mother wasn't having it. She stepped between us and reminded Sheila that her son had destroyed my room, terrorized me in the middle of the night, and helped plan my removal from the house. If hearing the truth hurt his feelings, that was the least of his problems. Meanwhile, Veronica continued writing notes. She hadn't missed a single word. Once she finished, she closed her notebook and looked directly at my father. Then she delivered the statement that changed everything. She informed him that she would be filing for an emergency custody modification. The color drained from Dad's face. He asked what that meant. Veronica calmly explained that based on the evidence, the court could immediately transfer primary custody to my mother. She cited the attempted relocation, the forged signature plan, the unsafe environment, and the violent behavior that had occurred inside the home. She explained that a judge would likely view the situation as a serious threat to my well-being. My father slowly sank onto the couch. For the first time all morning, he looked completely defeated, but Veronica wasn't finished. After conducting separate interviews with everyone in the house, she returned with even more damaging information. During her conversation with Sheila, she obtained an admission that the military school idea had originated with her. During her interview with Logan, he openly admitted that he had been promised my room if I left. Both statements were recorded. The evidence against them was becoming overwhelming. Then my mother turned toward me and told me to start packing, because by the end of the day, the custody hearing took place 2 weeks later in a crowded county courthouse. My mother, her lawyer Veronica, and I arrived early. My father sat across the room with his attorney, looking exhausted and defeated. For the first time since everything happened, he wouldn't even look me in the eye. When the hearing began, his lawyer tried to convince the judge that the boarding academy would provide structure, discipline, and opportunities for my future. But Veronica quickly dismantled that argument. She presented my academic records, showing straight A's in advanced classes, certificates from academic competitions, community service awards, and a spotless disciplinary history. She calmly asked the judge what exactly needed fixing in the life of a student who was already excelling in every measurable category. The courtroom fell silent because there was no reasonable answer. Then Logan was called to testify. Dressed in formal clothes and trying to appear mature, he claimed the entire incident had simply been a misunderstanding between brothers. He insisted he only wanted to discuss room arrangements and that emotions had gotten out of control. Veronica immediately introduced photographs taken by police that morning. Images of my destroyed bedroom door, broken belongings, scattered possessions, and the hole punched through the wall appeared on the courtroom screen. The judge studied each photograph carefully before looking directly at Logan. She asked if kicking down a door at 3 in the morning and destroying property was his definition of a normal conversation. Logan struggled to answer and finally admitted he had lost control because he felt everyone always favored me. His explanation did little to improve the judge's opinion. Sheila testified next. Through tears, she explained how difficult it had been watching Logan struggle with feelings of inadequacy. She admitted she believed removing me from the house would help her son regain confidence and finally feel comfortable. Veronica questioned her carefully, asking whether she had ever considered how being forced away from my home, friends, and school would affect me. Sheila hesitated before admitting she had been so focused on helping Logan that she never truly thought about my feelings. The judge looked visibly disturbed by that confession. Veronica then produced emails where Sheila described me as a problem that needed to be solved because my success made Logan feel inferior. Hearing those words read aloud in court shocked everyone in the room. Finally, my father took the stand. He looked older than I remembered, as though the previous 2 weeks had aged him years. Instead of defending himself, he admitted everything. He confessed that Sheila had pressured him repeatedly, insisting that Logan couldn't continue living under the same roof as me. He admitted he had chosen the easier path rather than confronting Logan's behavior or standing up for me. Most importantly, he confessed that he intended to submit the boarding school paperwork without my mother's approval because he knew she would never agree. When the judge asked if he understood that he had failed as a father, he lowered his head and quietly answered yes. Tears filled his eyes as he admitted he had prioritized keeping his new marriage intact over protecting his own son. After reviewing the evidence, the judge returned with her decision. She granted my mother primary custody immediately. My father was limited to supervised visitation until he completed extensive counseling. The judge stated clearly that attempting to relocate a child without proper consent demonstrated extremely poor judgment and showed he could not currently be trusted to make decisions in my best interest. Sheila protested from the gallery, claiming nobody understood Logan's struggles, but the judge quickly silenced her. For the first time since that terrible night, I felt a sense of relief. I no longer had to worry about being sent away or waking up in a house where my own father had secretly planned to replace me. Life changed quickly after that. I moved permanently into my mother's apartment, transferred schools, and began building a new routine. Although her apartment was much smaller than my father's house, it felt safer than any place I had lived in years. My mother helped me decorate my room and proudly hung my awards and certificates on the walls. At my new school, I joined the chess team and quickly made friends who appreciated my accomplishments instead of resenting them. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who encouraged me to succeed rather than treating my success like a problem. Meanwhile, consequences continued catching up with everyone involved. Logan's behavior worsened, leading to disciplinary issues at school and mandatory anger management counseling. Sheila blamed everyone except herself for the situation. Their marriage with my father quickly deteriorated under the pressure. Within months, Sheila moved out and filed for separation. The same family she had fought so hard to protect ultimately fell apart because it had been built on manipulation and resentment from the beginning. My father, however, began taking responsibility. He attended therapy several times a week and started sending letters apologizing for everything he had done. At first, I ignored them. No amount of words could erase the betrayal. Trust isn't rebuilt through apologies alone. It requires actions, consistency, and time. Eventually, under the guidance of a court-appointed therapist, I agreed to attend family counseling sessions with him. During those meetings, he never made excuses. He admitted his failures repeatedly and accepted whatever criticism I had for him. It didn't fix what happened, but it showed he was finally confronting the truth. Several months later, something even more surprising happened. Logan sent me a message. He admitted that he had spent years comparing himself to everyone around him and blaming others for his own insecurities. He acknowledged that destroying my room and treating me like an enemy had been wrong. He claimed therapy was helping him understand that tearing other people down would never solve his problems. While I appreciated the honesty, I chose not to respond. Some damage simply runs too deep, and forgiveness doesn't always mean rebuilding a relationship. As time passed, I focused on my own future. My grades remained excellent, I continued winning chess tournaments, and I discovered a new passion. After helping several classmates navigate difficult family situations, I realized I wanted to become a lawyer someday. Someone who could stand up for children caught in situations they couldn't control. My experiences had taught me how important it was to have someone fighting for your rights when the adults around you failed. Eventually, I agreed to meet my father for monthly dinners. Those conversations were difficult at first. I told him exactly how much his betrayal had hurt and how it shattered my trust. He listened without interruption and accepted every word. Slowly, over many months, we began building something new. Not the relationship we once had, that could never fully return, but a different relationship based on honesty and accountability. Looking back now, I realize that night changed everything. When Logan kicked down my bedroom door at 3 a.m. demanding my room, I thought my life was falling apart. In reality, it was exposing a truth that had been hidden for months. My father's choices revealed who he had become, but they also revealed who I was. I learned that my worth was never determined by someone else's insecurities. I learned that real family supports your success rather than fearing it. Most importantly, I learned that even when the people who should protect you fail, you can still stand up for yourself and build a better future. Sometimes the worst betrayal becomes the beginning of your greatest growth. Thanks for watching Her Family Revenge. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful family revenge stories. I wouldn't be living in that house anymore.